If Glastonbury and Amazon had a baby, the love child would be Bloom and Wild.
Yes, who doesn't like flowers?
I know, right? I know. In my first couple of weeks, the exec took a self-funded trip up a mountain in Chamonix, and I was absolutely petrified. I remember that pit of my stomach feeling, but like this wave of strength, like we're just gonna put one foot in front of the other, and we're gonna do this. I think the important thing for a CFO is it's not just all risks. We can get really in a downward spiral if you're only focusing on risks. Part of our job is capitalising on the opportunities as well.
Are you optimistic about the next year or so?
I don't just want to be nice. I want to help people reach their potential. I want to drive the business forward. I want to
striking the balance between being CFO in a new role and life and family, etc. How do you make that happen?
And I was sitting on the floor playing with my son, and I remember, but I wasn't there. I was thinking about all the various turmoil that we were dealing with. I really struggled when I was on maternity leave. Actually, I got postnatal depression because you go from being so important at your job, then it's switching off completely. In the first week of ownership, we had a business of 900. I had to bring it down to 700. I was sobbing. I was in this room sobbing as I made these redundancies. I think it was just the stress and then sort of the relief and also the heartbreak.
Good morning, Dominique.
Morning.
Thanks for coming in. As a starting point, can you tell us who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I am Dominique Highfield. I am the CFO of B Corp Bloom and Wild.
Excellent. And why Bloom and Wild, and how did we get to having this conversation?
I think you know this, Neil. So I sat in front of a recruiter after the acquisition of Purple Bricks, when my job had changed somewhat, as I wasn't. I wanted to be somewhere else. I'd run my course, and I sat in front of a recruiter and interviewed for a job. And the recruiter turned across the table and said, "I'm afraid you can't have this job. You're going to eat the CEO for breakfast. Let's meet up. Let's chat more and find out more about how I can help you." So I met this chap for breakfast, nice guy, and he said to me, "What's your dream company?" And I said, "Well, my dream wasn't out of thin air because I'm a huge consumer and big fan." I said, "Bloom and Wild. I love their growth story. I love their products. I'm their target consumer. They're a B Corp. I love their values. I'm excited about their future. I'd love to be there." And that recruiter was Neil. And Neil said, "Well, they're recruiting. I hear they're looking for their first CFO." And then you put me in contact. I met Aaron, the founder, and the rest was history. Well, 2 months of history, so not too distant history, but it was very fortuitous. The power of a network, the power of a good recruiter, and the power of knowing what you want, I suppose.
Serendipity.
Yeah,
I love it.
I think so. Well, thank you, Neil, as well. Thank you so much. I'm delighted.
It's an absolute pleasure. And it was, serendipity, luck. It doesn't often get talked about in our world. Timing. Yeah.
Contacts.
But
you guys had great contacts. You heard the jungle drums were rumbling.
Yeah. No, it's an amazing outcome.
Yeah.
And so far, tell us about your journey and maybe the first 90 days of being there. Yeah,
so I'm in my first 90 days, and I think it's worth saying I've had 3 sort of C-level jobs for the first 90 days, and they've all been very different. So maybe we can talk about that in a bit. But first 90 days at Bloom and Wild, it is exactly as I'd hoped it would be on the outside. So they look like they like to delight their customers, they like to delight the people, they like to look after the planet. They absolutely do. It's full of very big-brained, hardworking people. That customer service and that customer delivery doesn't happen by accident. So, and they've got good growth plans that are really exciting. So I'm thrilled. I think I'm doing a good job. I've just presented the budget to the board. I presented the budget to the senior leaders as well. So it's tricky, isn't it? When you start, there's a job to do. You want to do a great job. You're relatively fast-paced. That's why you're on the C-suite. But you also need to slow down. So it's been the time it takes to onboard. I probably haven't given it the full luxury because I've just wanted to get going, and I probably could have slowed down a bit more. But so far, so good, I think.
Has there been any real surprises since you've joined?
No, I've described it as if Glastonbury and Amazon had a baby, the love child would be Bloom and Wild. And the reason being is that Amazon is really fast-paced, very customer-centric, very data-driven. Glastonbury, everyone loves each other. Everyone's pulling the same direction. There's no ego. And, the love child of that being Bloom and Wild. So no surprises. I absolutely love it. I think the lack of ego has been a real pleasure. So it feels very unhierarchical. Aaron, the founder, is sort of sat at the desk with everybody else and they're making tea for people. So it's really lack of hierarchical. Customer is absolutely at the heart of what it does, but that doesn't feel surprising, knowing the brand and knowing what they're about. So it's been a pleasure. I hope it's a pleasure for a very long time, but no surprises really from how the brand's perceived on the outside to how it is when you're on the inside.
How important was that connection with Aaron in your decision? Because I guess you had the perception of the brand, the business, but then clearly there needs to be a chemistry with the founder.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's really important. And I would also say you don't really get it in an interview. So you kind of get your gut feel, but I've been really lucky. So in my first couple of weeks, the exec took a self-funded trip up a mountain in Chamonix. And I was absolutely petrified. I was sharing a bunk bed dorm with the other female exec members. We were climbing up a mountain. I'm not particularly healthy. So I was really nervous, but actually those bonding experiences were really important. And it sort of expedited our sort of comfort levels with each other. But the founder piece is huge, and I'm really lucky. Like this guy's incredible. He went around and measured 2,000-3,000 letterboxes to work out what the perfect size of a letterbox delivery was going to be. He's, bought and integrated 2 more brands to the business and across 8 countries. Like he's incredible. I have to be kind to myself and know that I'm not going to know as much as he knows. He's built this business over the last 12 years. I think any CFO that's coming to a founder-led business and thinks they're going to be able to know the business as well as the founder does, they just need to relax a little bit. It's not going to happen. But there's other skills and things that I can bring to Aaron. So I think we're finding our groove. The relationship's really important. It's really important for the investors. It's really important for the business. I trusted my gut, and then it has built from there for sure. And the other thing that was really important for me was that it was going to be someone I was going to learn from. Still relatively early on in my career, so I really wanted someone I can learn from, and I absolutely think I've got that with Aaron. So, and most of the exec, to be fair.
Good. And I think you touched a little bit. You've had 3 kind of experiences of the first 90 days. How does it compare to other experiences you've had? Because I guess they're all fundamentally going to be different, depending on the business, where it's at in its maturity cycle. Just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so they're really different. So Pentland was sort of 500 million plus business, and I'd grown up in that organisation. So the first 90 days on the C-suite there, in the top table there, was very, very difficult, very different. And I don't envy anyone that gets promoted within into that. I think it's really hard because you have perception of the exec have got perception of you. You've grown up in the organisation, so you've got your peers that you suddenly become leading, and it's a real challenge. And I was also doing that in COVID, remotely, etc. as well. So instead of turnaround, crisis management. So that was hard. And I think that was about repositioning yourself. And if I'm honest, I'm not sure I succeeded in repositioning myself. So that was a challenge. Like I say, I don't envy anyone that sort of gets promoted within. I think that's a really difficult thing to do. The second one was Purple Bricks, and that was a business in transformation. But I had no idea how big that transformation was. So in my first 90 days there, had to issue a profit warning, put the business up for sale, and find a buyer to save us from administration. So that was a very different 90 days. And that was, I don't attribute that to myself and my prowess on cash flow management. I attribute that to, I had an amazing team around me, Helena Marston, Mark Jenkins, Phil Lloyd, an amazing exec team. But I encouraged the finance team to speak their truth and empower them to share their problems and share what had been going on. And I also wasn't proud. So the CEO, very cleverly, she offered me some support to get under the skin of cash very quickly. We got an external consultant in, a really incredible guy. And not being proud, being new in, not being proud, accepting that help, empowering the team to sort of elevate up their thinking and what they were seeing enabled us to really react quickly. So I think I learned an awful lot about myself in that 90 days, but then the sort of 2 years that became, and we can talk a bit more about that. That was a lot. But that 90 days was about having no pride, asking lots of questions, getting lots of people that you trust around you. So I very quickly phoned PwC and got them into support because we were running out of cash. And so very quickly got people around me that I supported in. I'm quite proud of that story. It was a turbulent one, but it was a good outcome in the end. And then 90 days in a startup, scale up, that's in growth, that's reinvesting profit in more growth, that's scaling across multiple countries out of flowers as well, is very different. So I purposely didn't want to go through another sort of transformation. I wanted to be in growth. It's a very much more enjoyable place to be for my sanity. But yeah, it's very different. And here it's about sort of getting that growth and maturity. So asking that question, is this scalable? And putting processes in and to underpin growth and making sure you're putting your money in the right places to grow. So it's really exciting, but very different to the first 90 days at my previous places. That was a really long answer and I'm really sorry.
No, it's really nice though, that piece around being promoted internally as well versus externally. I think you mentioned it. It's like there's this great opportunity to reset almost who you are as you join a new organization. You don't get that luxury when you're being promoted, and that perception piece I think is really interesting actually. I don't know if you'd say anything more on that, but like what was that like specifically for you, that perception of, oh well, you're this person, well actually no, I want to be this person. That's really interesting.
It's really hard. And also the time at which you're doing that, I mean, you always have to make difficult decisions, but that time it was COVID, we were having to we did a complete reorg of the business and then sort of the people as a result. We had to have some really difficult conversations, so it was really hard. And Chirag Patel, the CEO, offered me this sort of thing that's really stuck with me, which was reframing kindness. And so when you're a leader, you want to be kind, you want to, you want to give people, days off when they earned it and celebrate their birthdays and be lovely and give them a promotion when they can. But reframing kindness when you're an exec member is, how do we get this business to survive? How do we look after the many, not the few? How do we think bigger picture and reframe kindness, not for the minutiae or the individual, but for the broader organization and legacy as a whole? So I think reframing your thinking was huge as part of that. And then as a result, you sort of reestablish your relationships. It's also very difficult if you're a leader that is vulnerable and empathetic and is built off trust and relationships. It's then very difficult to take a step back as well and sort of lead the whole organization. It's draining, it's tiring, and you have to be there for 700 people, not just the 17 you might have had in your function. So that's a big sort of, you also have to protect yourself and put boundaries in place as well. That was another big change. There was a few. Maybe
it comes down to that cultural alignment piece a little bit, doesn't it? Because you're probably in an environment, I'm making an assumption, where not everyone in the exec was like that. Whereas now you're in an environment where empathy and warmth and kindness is more in the DNA of the organisation, I guess. So
I think so. I to be fair, I think Pentland is incredibly empathetic and we've got some great leaders, but I think you're right in so much that Bloom and Wild does care wildly. It cares about customers and its employees. But I think I've also, where I've been parachuted in as an exec, you don't have that sort of much closer relationships with everybody. So you build them and you obviously, but it's at a different level. You're not sort of, you're in the trenches with them, but in a slightly different way. And you're sort of leading the whole, and you're the external sort of the foreign minister almost. You're the external lens as well. So you're spending more time speaking to investors and shareholders, and so you come at it from a slightly different level. And it's a privilege, I think, to come in at that level and not having grown up with the people, because you still care and you have this duty of responsibility, but you're not sort of so much in the day to day and being brought in. I think the other really difficult thing when you get promoted within is stopping doing what you used to do. So if you're the CFO, you can't be the CFO if you're still trying to be the FD. And so the other thing I learned there, and my advice to all CFOs, is have a good bench, like the power of your bench. And I think when I first got promoted at Pentland Brands, I was still trying to do all the things I'd already done, like as commercial finance director. And so that's really challenging. You just can't do it. So I think letting things go, shedding your skin, and making sure you've got great people underneath you. I'm now, the bench is really important. It's really powerful.
Good. Resilience, I guess. Going through that, the Purple Bricks journey, and all of the various crises, and we had this chat earlier with someone else. So we actually out of any of these crises? Probably not. It's still all ongoing. But tell us about sort of the resilience you've built in that time and how important that is.
So when I joined Purple Bricks, I had a 5-month-old baby, and I was supposed to be starting 3 days a week. just like a slow little ramp up, nice little gig. And I quickly realised this business was in dire straits. Like this was not a part-time CFO gig. This needed full-time pieces. I also was due to be moving up there. So I was based in London. Purple Bricks was up in Solihull. And so we ended up moving to the Midlands. So in the first few months, had a very small baby that I actually now don't even remember them crawling. So I look back now, and it was the time, I knew this was my second and last baby, and I was supposed to be cherishing all the lasts, and I don't even remember them. And I even looked back the other day on my phone to try and find a video of my son crawling because someone was talking about it. Not only do I not remember them, I don't have any video evidence of it. So it's like it never happened. So I think, so there was the baby thing, there was the business in dire straits, having to work, not just 5 days a week, but weekends, 2 a.m. It was the whole team worked incredibly hard. And then there was moving. And then during that as well, we had an impact investor as well. We had sort of lots of turbulent, unhappy investors because we were issuing profit warnings, etc. And at the same time as well, just before we moved, my partner got diagnosed with a cyst on his spinal cord, which led to paralysis. So it was all quite a lot, I would say. If you told me now that I was going to have to go and I would never have thought I could do it. Like the responsibility for your kids, for your family, for your partner, for the business. I'm very proud of myself that I did it. I think I'd probably still do it again if it landed me at Bloom & Wild. Sat here today talking to you about that. But you don't realise how much you can dig deep in those things. You hear about those mothers that lift buses over their kids. Like, I don't think I did that. I think it felt like I was lifting a bus sometimes. It was that much. But it's not just about the responsibility at home. It's how much you can take on when you've got sort of people's livelihoods. Purple Bricks surviving was so key. We had customers that had paid up front that they hadn't sold their house. We had 1,000 employees that were reliant on the paycheck. It's that responsibility and that sense of duty that just makes you dig really deep. So you do feel like you're sort of that superwoman that's sort of lifting out the bus over their kids, not just for at home, but at work as well. So that was really hard. I would do it again statistically to get me now here. And I wouldn't have believed that I could have done it before. Like I wasn't the only one. We had a fantastic team. The CEO was incredible. She was completely selfless, worked her absolute socks off to get us to where we were. And it was that sort of being in the trenches together with a group of people pushing for to save the business, which was really powerful. And I had an incredible team. But gosh, it was hard.
Do you feel different now?
It was really hard. I do. I think I've got a real sense of perspective now because I'm like, someone phones me up with a problem. I'm like, this is not a problem. This is okay. I do feel different now. I feel like I've got a real sense of perspective and a real sense of I know what I can achieve. Yeah. I also, from a parent perspective, I know I wasn't there all the time when my son was 6, 7, 8 months old. We've got such a lovely relationship. He's amazing. And I know that I'm not going to be there every single day, but when I am there, like I make it count. And and I know that, I just had a month off in between work and I had an amazing time with the family. I think balance, you're not going to get balance on a day-to-day or on a week-to-week, but you get it over the course of a year or 2 years and things. So and you've also got to remember why you're doing it, right? This is you're playing the long game and you're doing it for them. So yeah, I think I do feel different now. I think also sense of urgency and importance. You have a real sense of perspective. I think definitely helps.
Is there one moment in there that was just the hardest part? Because I can imagine that as much as you said it was a great team, you're having to let people go. That is, I fortunately haven't had to do it for those reasons, but I can imagine if the business is struggling and you just have to sit there in this environment and sit there and say to someone, I'm really sorry. Yeah. That's the end of the road for you here. And doing that multiple times, that must be
it's
tough.
Hard. I think there's two. I can probably bookmark it. One was when I realised, and when you're a listed business, you don't have much time, right? If you know there's a problem, you've got to go quickly. It was my first listed CFO gig. When I realised the business had to do a profit warning, and me and the CEO had the conversation, we need to suggest this business goes up for sale. I remember exactly where I was sat. I remember exactly who was in the room. I remember the feeling in my stomach. But I remember like this kind of we're going to do this and we're going to get through it and it's going to be okay. This is our only option. We've got to do it. But it's like you leave that room, you're like, right, who do I call? What do I need to do? So you got to quickly make some very quick phone calls and do some things you've never done before, never issued a profit warning to the city before. And that's where having that sort of trusted people around you and sort of lack of pride is really important. So I remember that pit of my stomach feeling, but like this wave of strength, like we're just gonna put one foot in front of the other and we're gonna do this. So I remember that. And then I also remember the flip side of it. We found some amazing buyers. We found a competitor, STOIX, Sam Mitchell, the CEO, Charles Dunstan, Andrew Harrison, with the sort of the brains behind it. Sam also was a brain, but they were the money as well. And we were really fortunate. And they could have easily pushed the business into administration, got rid of all the people, kept the brand name, but they didn't. They kept the people. And the way they looked after the people was really, really special. So I was really privileged and grateful to them. And I think I told them a lot. I'm very happy to be saying it again publicly. But it didn't come without redundancies. And so in the first week of ownership, we had a business of 900. I had to bring it down to 700. So I had to put the business, everyone knew it was coming. Everyone in the room that I was presenting to knew it was coming. But I think because we'd gone through the stress that we'd gone through, the relief of finding the safe haven in the new owner, and then sort of saying the words out loud, I was sobbing. I was in this room sobbing as I made these redundancies. I think it was just the stress and then sort of the relief and also the heartbreak that these people are losing their jobs. But going back to reframing kindness, the many, not the few, we were saving 700 jobs and letting go of 200 and also saving all the customers' money that had paid up front. So I sobbed through that. But I wouldn't change that either. It very quickly built the trust between me and the CEO. The new CEO, he could very quickly see what I was about. He then made me COO, so looking after all the estate agents. But also it gave the organisation hope that I looked after them, that I cared for them, that I was human. And I got a bit of feedback as well. As a female leader, not many people show their emotions. Often they try and sort of be more masculine than some men. So I got some really good feedback from the organisation at my ugly crying during that session.
What qualities do you think then you bring as a leader? And I think obviously lots of debate about female leaders and whether they have to change themselves sometimes to get to the top. And what's your view on all of that?
So I don't think it's a male-female thing. I think nowadays, just everybody, even the male leaders now are so much more empathetic and family-centric and things than these. So I think it's less about gender, more about just how we are now and how more, how the importance of work out, life outside of work and putting people first. People know that happy people lead to better results. So, but I do think there is a leaning more into focusing on people, focusing on sort of what's happening outside of work, because we all know that it breeds better performance. If you have a more diverse team, you have a better performance, better return on investment. And the same is true if you have a diverse and a happy team. So it speaks for itself. But I do think it sort of allows women to play more into the space that traditionally or stereotypically they're known for, sort of more empathy, sort of more crying.
I love a good cry, don't worry.
Good. I cry when I'm angry. It's a really female trait. But if I get angry, I cry and it's terrible. So I don't get angry very often.
We were trying to draw like soft emotional stuff.
Oh, no. I get angry as well.
Okay,
yeah. But I can't get angry without crying, which is really embarrassing. So luckily it doesn't happen very often.
And then you go through all those challenges and ultimately save a load of jobs. And then I'm also thinking, and then you get to a point where you go, well, and now I'm leaving.
Yeah.
You must feel a sense of like, oh, gone through, this is not going to be an easy conversation. And yeah, I guess a lot of people who may or may not listen to this have got to go through that sort of awkward thing of, yeah, we've done this and, we've saved some jobs.
Yeah.
Now I need to look after my number one.
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I think that's it, right? I think at that point in time when we were sort of going through the transaction and then integrating, it goes back to that responsibility. You put yourself towards the back and you focus on what needs to be done. You sort of that sense of responsibility. I don't think everyone would do that, but I think most people would. And then you get through it and we got through the integration. I had amazing opportunities to lead, close to 1,000 estate agents and some amazing people and a whole different, wheelhouse being a COO. But it wasn't what I set out to do. I joined that business to be a listed CFO, and I enjoyed it and I was having a great time. But I would look at my peers and my LinkedIn feed was suddenly, it was going all from being CFO, value creation stories to suddenly being about how to sell a house in 30 days. And I was like, I love this business, but this isn't my career and this isn't and I think as I noticed my algorithms changing on LinkedIn, I was like, this is moving further and further away from what I anticipated for my career. So, and that's when I started speaking to the likes of you. And I think throughout, I think it was the right time for me and for the business for me to step away. It was done with absolute integrity on both sides. And I'm still in contact with many of the team at every level in Purple Bricks, and I wish them all the very best. But they get to your point now, where you have to think about number one. Mm-hmm. And I've been I don't think I've been calculating my career, but I've been relatively mindful about what one thing leads to another. And my LinkedIn algorithm was telling me this isn't taking you to where you want to go next. Mm-hmm. So it was...
Is the algorithm back?
It's back.
Good.
It's back.
In your earlier career, and I guess there's always been this theme of consumer rights. So is that something that you've always been heavily passionate about in terms of something you look for?
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. And that for me, and I can see that in spades when I'm at Bloom and Wild. Yeah, I think that's key. Putting the customer first. I think that's also what makes me I think a good finance person is I think as a customer, and I think that's what makes a really good commercial finance partner as well. So yeah, that's been quite purposeful, and the brand awareness is something that I'm also really proud of. It sounds really silly, but I love saying the Bloom and Wild CFO. Like I love, I think that brand awareness and that sort of brand affinity that people have, I get really proud, and that is really important for me.
Because who doesn't like flowers?
I know, right? I know. And also sending flowers to make people happy. I mean, what a lovely place to be. And so you talk about crying. We had our first, I've been to a couple of monthly meetings. We had one last month where they were playing the customer feedback. Oh gosh, I got something in my eye because this customer was just so sweet and talked about how happy, she had a flower subscription with us that arrived every 2 weeks and how much joy it brought her. And I got a bit soppy at it. It was lovely. Very different to struggling to sell your home. But yeah, it was, that customer, touching the customer and having that, big known consumer brand is really important.
I do think we obviously speak to lots of CFOs in this way and have conversations at a deeper level. And I do think that's the thing that you find when someone really finds their home. It's yes, they're a good CFO, but as soon as they really align their purpose to the organization, you're going to be more productive, more passionate, but ultimately then more successful. So I feel like everyone needs to get to that place, but it's really hard sometimes, isn't it?
It's really hard. And I think a good CFO, they're good at numbers, they're good at risk, they're good at a bit of legal stuff. But actually what they should be really good at is telling stories and telling stories convincingly. And if you're passionate about the product, you're passionate about the purpose, suddenly you can tell a much more powerful story. So, big part of my role is going to be that value creation piece, speaking to investors, speaking to future investors and selling it. And as an avid very happy consumer and someone that understands the consumer proposition, it will definitely come through for sure.
Just on that investor piece, so we speak to a lot of aspiring CFOs who want to be in the future a CFO, and obviously the way the world's gone in recent years, a lot of businesses are venture capital backed, private equity backed, different flavors of that, and often they want someone who's got investor experience. What do you think about that, and what would you say to aspiring people who haven't necessarily had that experience yet?
I think you can get the same level of experience, the skill set that it's going to take, you can get it internally. Mm-hmm. So often what you're doing is you're just doing it with a slightly different lens. But if you're in FP&A, for example, you're a commercial finance business partner and you're talking about the strategic plans or the budget to your stakeholders internally, it's very much similar. So I don't think it's a unique skill that you can only get when you're out there speaking to investors. So I think hone those skills internally. They're really powerful and they'll set you really up for success externally. But I think really you won't get thrown in the deep end. And so whether you're listed, you'll be able to hear all the different, you'll be able to listen to all the previous sort of announcements and things and things. But internally, now with Aaron, I'm sitting and watching him and how he's doing. So I'm not marking his homework, I'm learning from him. And I'm picking out, and no one's going to want to throw you in at the deep end, and it's not in anyone's best interest to see you fail. So I think asking for those opportunities and making sure they happen is really key. The other thing is if you are at that level and you're ready for your next CFO piece, or you're to be promoted, you'll get brought into those rooms. So I'll very happily bring my VP in of finance, or sort of finance directors if and when they're ready. Nothing would make me happier than seeing my direct reports be promoted internally or externally. That's like one of my big things I want to sort of achieve in the space. And so bringing them in when they're ready. And if you're in the right company, you've got the right leader and you're doing the right job, you'll get brought in at the right time. But you can do so much internally. It's very similar skill set. Yeah. It's just a slightly different lens.
And on that note, when you've been in the boardroom or you've had an investor there, is there a question that sticks out in your mind? Is like, that was a tricky question from an investor or a board member, where as a CFO I'm going, okay, I've got to think about this.
There was one that stuck in my mind at Purple Bricks, when one of the investors was like, so you're going to put your own money in? I was like, okay.
Let me ask my other half.
Yeah, so I was like, that one does stick in my head. Yeah. I think that's a really good question. I think it's mainly around sort of value creation and sort of what the future holds, and how making sure what you're doing on a short-term basis fits with the longer-term story. If you're only looking at the next 12 to 18 months, you're not going to be able to answer the board's questions, and they're going to see right through it. So making sure what you're operating on in year and in the next year sits on the longer-term plan. So I think I would get caught out when I didn't have that sort of 5-year horizon. The other thing that I think is the macro. And we're very good always at looking internally and a bit of navel gazing, but I think understanding market share, market opportunities, what's happening on sort of inflation, etc. So I think that's the other thing the board are really good at keeping you on your toes on, is what's happening externally, and a good CFO should be putting their head above the parapet, looking on a longer term time horizon, looking at their peers, and if you can get quite caught out if you're just sort of looking introspectively. They're quite good at that, annoyingly good at that.
And balancing, obviously, again, where we've been in the world last 5 years, pandemic, etc. You've got, everyone's got these sort of long-term visions. We did a business plan. I think we were talking to an advisor the other day. So it's great you've got this long-term plan, but actually, let's be honest, let's take it 12 months at a time, because so much changes, inflation, supply chain issues, another war, whatever it is. How do you balance those two things?
So scenario planning. And so I think there's something that I'm really keen on, and I've implemented at the last 2 places I've been, is risks and opportunities tracking. So what I love, my standard board slide is where you're going to outturn for the year, all the risks that are getting the potential downside, and all the opportunities, potential upside, and your forecast for the year should be broadly in the middle. That's a bit of a playbook of mine that I'm kind of rinsing and repeating. So I think looking at all the risks and all the opportunities, it's very unlikely that they're all going to go one way or another. So you'll probably end up in a net place. But I think that's a really important tactical thing for the here and now. But then also having your scenario planning, your trajectories off the basis of those. So I think it doesn't need to be really I know lots of people probably come and sit at this seat and tell you about AI and all these clever things they're doing. They probably are. You can do it really high level, very simplistically as well. So I think scenario planning off kind of your risks that are being faced. And I think the important thing for a CFO is not just all risks. We can get really in a downward spiral if you're only focusing on risks. Part of our job is capitalizing on the opportunities as well. So I don't think we should go into a boardroom or into a budget going, this is our number and these are all the risks and why we can't achieve it. That's not going to set anyone's world on fire. These are the risks that I'm mitigating, and these are all the opportunities I'm going to be encouraging the business to be going after as well. And that's really powerful. So your scenario planning should go both ways.
Yeah. By the time we release this is probably out of date, but so we've
those risk and ops, that is a hard and fast rule for life.
Oh no, not that. What I'm about,
if that goes out of date, I'm in trouble.
No. That is universal. Okay, I'm good. Sure. So we've got all the politics out the way now, basically. Yeah. The elections, the budget, etc.
You did not tell me we're going to come in here to talk about Trump.
We're not talking about politics. Good. That's one of our rules. We definitely. This is not a politics.
I am
podcast.
not ready for that.
But just more looking into next year now. Are you? I mean, you seem an optimistic person. Are you optimistic about the next year or so?
Yes, I am. I think we're in a really fortunate position in Bloom and Wild because we're in a growing market segment. So online flowers is growing, and but I think I think, sounds really confident, doesn't it? We are optimistic. I am optimistic. I'm also optimistic that even if it is challenging, I think businesses are so resilient and nimble now that we can react. And so that's the really, even if things don't quite go as fortuitously as we've planned, and we've planned in, you know, an okay horizon, not an amazing sort of external horizon, but with really good internal growth. I know that we can react to it. So I think we've got the right size cost base, focus on the right things, got really good processes in place, good margins, an ability to react, nimbleness, and so many organisations do now. So I think making the most of a good crisis and making sure that you are able to react to all these things has taught us so much. Yeah. So I think it is looking positive. We are factoring in some cost pressures and some price inflation, as I'm sure everybody is. But even if it's even harder than we thought, I know we'll be well placed to react. And I think many organisations are now.
Great.
As a leader, you obviously, again, nice person. How do you find
it's just a facade.
I was going to say, how do you find doing the tough stuff when you have to do it without crying and getting angry? Obviously, as you said earlier. But what is your style of leading a team and creating that kind of culture within the finance function?
So I am myself, so I will flex my style if I'm in the boardroom versus if I'm making tea with a team. But I am myself. I sort of show a bit about me and talk about my kids and, you know, how annoying my commute to work was, and share a bit about me, and I expect to be, you know, shared back. So I create that sort of level of trust. But when it comes to difficult messages, it comes back to that reframing of kindness. Yeah. I don't want to just be, it's that ruinous empathy versus radical candor. I don't just want to be nice. I want to help people reach their potential. I want to drive the business forward. I want us to be really demanding of our suppliers and deliver amazing customer service. And that doesn't just come from being nice. That comes from being good and having high standards and having high expectations. So you can get there whilst having fun and being an optimist and having a great time. And I take my work very seriously. I don't take myself very seriously. But I think you can't just be nice. You can't be soft with it. Nice doesn't mean soft. You can be kind and fun and all this stuff, and it doesn't mean you don't have sharp edges and you don't get stuff done. And I think maybe that's how times are changing, and maybe that people, you don't need to be sort of hard-nosed and bulletproof to be delivering high performance. And I think that's really important. And people, I think, I'm not afraid to show my teeth. And actually, if I do show my teeth, it actually has more of an impact because it doesn't happen very often. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, what's just happened? So yeah, I'm not afraid to show my teeth when I need to. And I think that has an impact. But you can be nice and fun and still have really high standards.
Yeah. I think Simon Sinek, I think, said something like, you can almost ask permission to have a difficult conversation. And so it's just about how you frame it. Yeah. Your expectations don't change. So you can say, look, you know, Dominic, do you mind if we have a really difficult conversation right now? And little things like that actually are quite useful.
I like that. I really like that.
Nice people to have hard conversations. You're almost asking for consent.
Yeah. I also, I remember a poor performer I had years ago, and I wasn't facing into the conversation because I was trying to be nice. Yeah. And my boss at the time said to me, you're not being nice because people are talking badly behind his back. People aren't giving opportunities because he's not performing. You're not being nice. It's the opposite of nice. Like, tell him the truth. Tell him how he's perceived. Help him with his weaknesses. And that's really stuck with me. So, you know, what is kindness really? It's like if someone's got something in their teeth, you tell them. So it's that sort of reframing of kindness, which is really important. But yeah, I could talk about this for hours.
Well, that's the radical candor bit as well, isn't it? Exactly. That, you know, actually being kind is being honest and not letting someone dip below where they want to be and where they should be for the business and the organisation. So
it's also, I think it's something that's really motivated me because I've also seen leaders give messages really sort of robotically or without empathy or saying things like, oh gosh, can't believe you just said that. You know, we've got too much fat in our organisation. No one wants to be called fat. Like, oh, we're trimming the fat. You know, and so it's something that's actually really driven me as I wanted to have those difficult messages because I would rather it came from me and I could make you feel like you're having a bit of a cuddle and life was going to be okay than, you know, being told we're trimming the fat. So it's actually, I would much rather have those conversations. It's what really motivated me as a leader, is watching. And of course I'm clumsy. Of course I say the wrong things and I speak an awful lot. So I probably say more wrong things than most, but it comes from a place of positive intent. But it's something that's really driven me, is because I would much rather be having those conversations myself, because I know that I can do it and hopefully make people feel all right at the end of it, or at least see hope and that they're going to be okay and they feel supported along the way. So if anything, it's driven me to have more of those conversations.
And is it something you've learned and developed over your career as you've kind of, how do I say it, grown into your own skin and grown your own confidence levels over life, or have you always been like that?
I think it's something I've grown into, and I still get really nervous. I still overthink things. I still think, oh God, it doesn't come without its huge levels of anxiety and overthinking as well. But I've definitely got better at it, and experience is key there. And I think if it ever gets easy, probably sort of need to take a break, because it should never be easy given those difficult messages. But yeah, I think it's definitely something that I've got better at as it's gone on. And also when you see the impact of these conversations, so I go back to that Purple Bricks one when I was sobbing and I was letting go of the tube. If I could fast forward and see the impact and the positive impact on those 700 that we kept, it would have made it a lot easier at the time. So I think that experience and knowing, you know in your heart why you're doing it, but then the experience of seeing that through, I think will make it easier in the long run as well. So I think, experience is key for sure.
Okay. What else is influencing you at the moment? Books, podcasts, things. What's influencing you, inspiring you at the moment?
My children are huge inspirations for me. So my son thinks I look after flowers and I look after people, and so I think that's a big inspiration for me. Podcasts are books. I do like Simon Sinek. Me and my partner watch a lot of YouTube. I think that means we're young and cool.
I know. You say Sinek.
No, I think it is Sinek.
Which one? I'd say Sinek.
I know. Just feel
get him. Why do you get him on here and ask? Whether he can be your next podcast?
Definitely on
podcast guest.
next season for sure.
But yeah, we do watch a lot of YouTube, which I think makes us young, hip, and cool. So don't laugh.
YouTube Kids or YouTube Normal?
YouTube Normal.
Okay,
yeah,
fine.
YouTube Normal. Yeah, YouTube Kids is also ruining the algorithm. So.
And how? So in terms of striking the balance between being CFO in a new role, in a big role, and life and family, etc. How do you make that happen?
Not very well, I think. And I think it goes back to I'm not going to be sort of hitting all the right notes, but over the course of a week or a month, I probably get the balance about right.
Yep.
What I've noticed is what I was trying to do before was being there for the moments that matter, like the school play and the nativity and the assembly and things. What I think is, particularly as my children are getting older, what's really important is the moments that don't matter. It's that bedtime. It's that sort of Friday afternoon pickup where you can go and get the sweets from the shop and see all the friends. And it's the moments that aren't the big set plays that I think are really important. So I'm trying to be there for the big set plays. I'm trying to put my phone away. My phone is this. I think if I look back at my life when I'm older, that's going to be my biggest regret, is my phone.
Story of our generation. Though,
yeah. So I'm trying to put my phone away around mornings and bedtimes. If my partner was on his assignment, he would tell you I'm terrible at it and I'm lying. But
not Simon Sinek.
Not Simon Sinek.
Okay.
No,
Be a definite in for us to get.
Yeah, no. Well, fortunate for me because I love my assignment, but he's not. It's not Simon Sinek. So yeah, no, I think the phone is putting that away and being there. So when you're there, being present, I think it does help as well. I remember being at Purple Bricks and the stress of the job, and I was sitting on the floor playing with my son, and I remember I wasn't really there. I was maybe putting some blocks on a thing or playing something, but I wasn't there. I was thinking about all the various turmoil that we were dealing with. Definitely now, I am still thinking about work, but it's a really opportunistic, exciting growth, reinvestment of profit way. So I'm definitely able to switch off more and be there more, which is important. So,
can you fully switch it off ever?
No.
You know the answer to that question.
Well, no, we talked to Mickey about it the other day, and he said I'm always on.
No, I can't. And I don't want to either. I really like it. My old boss Sam Mitchell used to talk about the black run, right? We're on the black run, and it's fun and we like it, and there's great rewards at the end of it. And I really struggled when I was on maternity leave. Actually, I got postnatal depression because you go from being so important at your job and like sort of work is so important to you to then it's switching off completely, and you're sort of mashing up sweet potato and sort of struggling with mastitis and all this kind of stuff. So I didn't really enjoy being on maternity leave. I love my children, but that's all or nothing. It's really difficult. So I'm always on, and I'm always a mum. I've always talking about my children. So it's your whole self, right? I'm always a CFO at Bloom & Wild at home, and I'm always the mum of Joss and Seth at work. And, you know, it's just, I can't switch off for my kids either. So it works both ways.
When you're on the black run, as the analogy you've just used, how do you stop yourself generally kind of flying off into the trees through the barrier and,
off
you know,
beat.
just
off
not
beat.
even off beat, I mean, actually into the trees. Because I think it's really important, you know, like I'd say, I try and put good, you know, exercise and routines, but it's not easy, is it? Like, have you got that down yet in terms of balancing and looking after yourself and your mental well-being as well as all that other stuff?
No, I'm really bad at that. And I think when you ask how do I make this work, I'm not exercising enough. I just bought a walking mat so I can walk at my desk. It arrived yesterday.
A couple of our team have those as well,
so I'm putting my own health, I would say, to the bottom. But I also know that, like I say, it goes in swings and roundabouts. So there'll be certain weeks where things will be quieter and I'll do more. But the other thing I should probably also say is I have an awful lot of help. So I have a lady that comes and looks after the children. I have a lady that comes to the house. I have Simon, who's amazing. I couldn't do this if I had to do everything else that traditionally a stay-at-home mum would do as well. So how do I stop swerving off? I don't prioritise my own health. I think I need to do more of that. And work isn't stopping me from doing that. I'm stopping me from doing that because I'm trying to be everything else. But also I have an awful lot of help. And Simon is incredible at home. He does more than his fair share. And I wouldn't be able, he stops me from swerving off the black run, if I'm honest. The house wouldn't run without him. So yeah, he's incredible. And I think we talk an awful lot about equality at work. And if you were to ask me, like, how do you get more equality at work? I would say you need equality at home. Because if Simon didn't do everything that he did, I wouldn't be able to be the CFO. So it's really, really important. I think people often don't talk about the support they get at home. And I've noticed it a lot when I've been sat in rooms and everyone around the table's got a housewife and I'm thinking, wow, this isn't going to work. I can't do this. And Simon works really hard. He does more than his fair share at home. And then we outsource a fair amount as well.
Yeah. So it's always a delicate balance to achieve, isn't it?
It is.
An important one.
It's a costly one as well. It doesn't come for free, but it's a worthwhile investment because otherwise we wouldn't be able to do it all. And it means that when we are at home or we are with our kids, we're doing the fun stuff and we're making memories and doing nice things.
What do you think about having a mentor? And we've had this discussion with quite a few people who said it's pretty instrumental in getting to a C-suite role or becoming a great C-suite leader. Have you got one? Have you had one?
I've had 2 official ones, both incredible, both very different, and I think they absolutely have helped me. I had them when I was at Pentland just before I went into Purple Bricks, and I also kept in contact with them during Purple Bricks. And I still sort of now, if something happens, I'll message them and things. So I think it's really important. I'm also a mentor for other people as well. It gives you, it makes you feel less alone. It gives you a real, someone that you can trust and that's been through it before, which is really, really useful. And they are really powerful. They're also cheerleaders for you as well. They're often well connected. They often sort of know the jungle drums as well. So I think it's really powerful. I'd highly recommend it. And there's loads of places, particularly for women, like in women's networks and stuff, where they offer up mentoring. I mentored 2 people, 2 amazing, both called Charlotte. So 2 amazing ladies, and they're going to do really well, I hope. And I hope I can be there to watch it. I think it's really powerful. I would love to know more about what makes a good mentor. I'm just replicating what I've seen and been a part of, but I haven't yet been on sort of a mentoring scheme or anything like that. So my Charlottes are probably getting short shrift. I'm just emulating what I've had done to me, which has seemed to work so far. So have you seen some good mentors in your time?
Well, it's just a theme that comes up with a lot of people who, had very successful careers. There's a few themes when you have these conversations over the years. Is kind of, I had a great mentor.
Yeah.
And then, I was in the right time at the right place. I got lucky. It's funny how often those 2 things come up. I think often there's hard graft and work ethic, and with some others there's a chip on the shoulder from something in childhood, or there's a fire inside from something, and then a combination of all those things seem to be the themes that have come up. but I'm sure there's other things.
I hoped he was going to say was that I've been a great mentor to him.
Oh, that goes without saying, Rory. That goes without saying.
It didn't happen.
Yeah.
Well, you haven't
mentored him.
You just haven't been.
Say, no, you said had been, but I was going to say still are.
Still are.
Isn't that nice?
I think there's a mentor. There's also like a cheerleader thing as well, and then there's like a work BFF.
You're a cheerleader. There we go.
Cheerleader.
That's right.
And also a work BFF. You need a work BFF as well. That's really important. All of these things come back to like trusted support. And I think cheerleading is really, I think it's a big part of the CFO job as well for the team is giving people the space and like cheering them on as they go, celebrating success. Yeah, I the mentoring is important, but I don't know how good I am at doing it. I've definitely benefited from it, but I want to get better at it for sure.
What are the other secret ingredients then? So mentoring, getting lucky. What have we missed?
Mentoring, getting lucky. I think, I was when I was always obsessing about being promoted, it never happened. So at Sainsbury's and Amazon, you had the sort of C5, C6. I remember like I was obsessed with getting promoted. Absolutely. I was like, how do I, every one-to-one, every performance review, I was like, how do I get to the next level? We'd have like this group of C5s at a lunch being like, that C6 is no good. We could do that. We were obsessed with it. It all consumed us. My manager must have hated having a one-to-one with me because I knew all I was going to say. And then when I went to Pentland and I found a company that I really fit in and I really enjoyed, going back to your point, Rory, and I really liked what they did, I liked what they were about, I just relaxed a bit. I didn't care about being promoted. I just sat there and did a good job. And I was much more enjoyable to be around. I would put on more projects because I just wanted to do a good job and I was just enjoying myself. Hard work and what have you. But I just stopped obsessing about getting to the next level and then it happened.
Yeah.
And I think that is luck, of course, but it's also just doing a good job and enjoying yourself versus being ruthlessly, focused on the next move as opposed to the job you're doing at the time. So I would also suggest just relax a bit, enjoy what you're doing, make sure you're in the right place, the right culture, something that values you, and good things will come. I think when you're obsessing about it, it's just not very enjoyable to be around. I would have hated to manage me back at Sainsbury's and Amazon. It would have been a nightmare. So yeah, I think the cultural fit and the purpose and enjoyment is key.
Yeah, I think it sounds like you talked a little bit about being present at home, not looking at the phone. It's actually the same mentality. It's like enjoy the journey that you're on now and don't worry too much about the future. That will take care of itself.
It will. But going back to that, there is also a big thing around home and work. So of course, Pentland was lovely and I was much better because I was less obsessed. I was also much happier outside of work. So I'd met my Simon, not Simon Sinek, my Simon.
Just to be clear.
Just to be clear. I'd met my Simon and we were just having a really lovely time. And he also made me feel, gave me great confidence and I knew my self-worth and I just relaxed more broadly in life at work and at home. And I think that's definitely helped perpetuate my career. I think that feeling of self-confidence and self-worth outside of work has then really manifested in work as well. So I would also say, and you can see it when someone's at work and they're not happy outside of work, how it impacts their sort of work life. So I think there's definitely room to say, make sure that you're happy in your whole self and you're feeling, confident and grounded in your whole self, and then so the work stuff will take care of itself. There is definitely a correlation with me getting happier outside of work and then succeeding in work as a result.
Yeah, I don't know if you read the book, The First 90 Days, but there's a big section in there actually about that and making sure that your family are prepared for the fact that, look, this first period is going